All right, let's talk about the political spectrum. But, forget all the confusing labels for a second. We're going to break it all down to one single, super simple idea that ties every political viewpoint together. You ready? Let's dive in.
So, you hear these words thrown around all the time, right? Radical, liberal, conservative, reactionary. Sometimes they're used like insults, other times like a badge of honor. But what do they really mean? What's the one thing that actually separates them?
Well, the answer is surprisingly simple. It really all comes down to just one thing: their approach to change. That's it. Are they trying to hit the rewind button, pause things where they are, make slow and steady progress, or just, tear everything down and start over? Once you get this one concept, the whole spectrum just clicks into place.
Okay, so let's start at one far end of the spectrum with the reactionary. And the name kind of gives it away, right? Their entire worldview is a reaction to what's happening right now.
Reactionaries are all about a kind of nostalgia for a past that they see as, well, perfect. They look around at the world today and think, nope, we took a wrong turn somewhere. So their goal isn't just to stop things from changing, it's to literally throw the car in reverse and go back to a time they believe was better, more orderly, maybe more virtuous.
So, how do they plan on doing that? Well, because they see all this modern progress as a huge mistake, they're often willing to use pretty extreme, sometimes even authoritarian methods to undo it. And their economic ideas can be pretty interesting too. They might reject both modern capitalism and socialism, and instead romanticize something like a pre-industrial or even a feudal-type system from that golden age they're trying to get back to.
All right, let's take one step over on our spectrum to the conservative. Now, their focus isn't so much on the past, it's really about protecting what we have in the present. For a conservative, the name of the game is stability. They put a lot of value on tradition, on institutions that have stood the test of time. It's not that they're against any change, but they're definitely skeptical of big, sweeping changes made overnight. They tend to think, hey, those kind of experiments often cause more problems than they solve. So their main goal? Protect the status quo.
And that way of thinking leads directly to their method. If change has to happen, it better be slow, cautious, and respectful of what came before. When it comes to the economy, this usually means a belief in free market capitalism. The idea is that less government getting in the way, lower taxes, and more individual responsibility, that's the recipe for a stable and prosperous society.
Okay, now we're crossing the middle of our spectrum. We're shifting gears from preserving the present or going back to the past to looking forward. So let's talk about the liberal.
At its core, liberalism is all about the individual. It's built on these huge principles like personal liberty, everyone being equal under the law, and the idea that government needs the people's permission to rule. It's fundamentally an optimistic ideology. It sees a better future out there and believes we can and absolutely should work to make society better.
But how do they get to that better future? Well, liberals believe in working inside the system we already have. They push for gradual, democratic reforms. And on the economic side, that usually means regulated capitalism. They see a really important role for government in making sure things are fair, in providing a social safety net for people, and, protecting us from the wilder side of a totally unchecked free market.
So if you put these two, conservative and liberal, right next to each other, you can really see the main tension, can't you? Conservatives want cautious change to keep the system safe. Liberals want gradual change to make the system better. And economically, it's that classic debate we always hear. Keep the government's hands off, or have the government step in to make sure things are fair.
And that brings us to the other far end of our spectrum. For this group, slow, gradual reform just isn't going to cut it. Welcome to the world of the radical.
A radical looks at the system we have and says, this thing is broken beyond repair. The goal isn't to fix it or patch it up. The goal is to tear it down and build something completely different from the ground up. They want fundamental, immediate, and extreme change everywhere.
And it makes sense, right? If you think the whole system is the problem, why would you try to work within it? That's why radicals often talk about methods outside the system, things like revolutionary action. And their economic ideas? It's a total break from what we have now. We're talking huge shifts away from capitalism, like having the government take over all the major industries.
And here's a really interesting thing to think about. The two extremes, the reactionary and the radical, can sometimes look alike because they're both willing to use extreme methods to get what they want. But, and this is the key, their destinations are polar opposites. The reactionary wants to use extreme measures to drag society backwards, to some golden age. The radical wants to use them to blast society forwards into a future no one's ever seen before.
All right, let's put all the pieces together now and see how this whole spectrum looks from start to finish.
So here it is, the whole thing in a nutshell. You've got the reactionary who wants to reverse change and go back in time, the conservative who wants to slow change to protect what we have now, the liberal who wants gradual change to improve the future, and the radical who wants revolutionary change to build a completely new future. See, when you look at it through the lens of change, it all just makes sense.
This is a really powerful way to understand these big ideologies. But it leaves us with a final, fascinating question. Where do actual ideas fit in all this? I mean, think about something like healthcare or environmental policy. As time goes on, where that idea sits on the spectrum can totally change. Something that was once a radical idea might become a liberal reform. Then it becomes a mainstream conservative value. And who knows, maybe centuries from now, it's part of that glorious past a reactionary wants to bring back. Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?